So, welcome all to the WoW Classic panel, and I will pass it off to Josh, our moderator for this evening, and enjoy.
Thank you. Hello, Classic fans. What's going on? How are we? It's so good to see you all. This is this tight-knit community that we talk about. We're very happy to be here, and we're gonna cram it into a 45-minute slot here with a lot of classic chat, so we're really excited. I'm going to introduce everyone. If you're not aware of who all these wonderful gentlemen up on stage with me are, let's go through it real quick, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what's up with Classic right now. So let's go from my left to right. Down the end of YouTube fame, you all know him, you all love him, Platinum WoW.
Hi.
And we have the brothers here, again of YouTube fame, Melderon, Defcamp. Say hello. Back from years gone by and back with a vengeance of WoW Radio, Athalus. And down the end, if any of you do happen to listen to Countdown to Classic, you know he is my number one contributor, my number one caller, Ayle.
Oh yeah.
So guys, where I figured we would pick up from is people think WoW Classic is out. What possibly could there be to talk about? A lot. And we're going to go through it tonight as quickly and effectively as we can. And I'm going to start off with you, Ayle, actually, and we'll piggyback off each other here. But it's talking about the state of WoW Classic as we are right now. And, as we say, the game is out. It had a huge reception. But things have settled down to a point that we kind of expected roundabout now. Layers have been removed. A little, a bit of the population has dropped away as we forecast. How do you see the state of WoW Classic right now?
Fluid.
Yeah,
state.
Yeah.
I think right now with how they've changed, introducing the different, originally they had 6 segments that they were going to release the content in, releasing Dire Maul early. How they've taken out layering, I think some servers still have layering in. It's shown a real shift in how they're approaching the overall Classic release. They've kind of gone away from what they've decided they were going to do, what they've told the community they're going to do. Releasing Dire Maul early before Phase 2, I think is their first kind of sign that, this might be a little bit different than what they originally had communicated to us. Yeah.
I'll move down the line. Athalus, are you happy with where we are at the moment?
I am. The big thing for me was just seeing how much the population skyrocketed, right? And you look at why did Blizzard ultimately do this? I think they did it because there was a need. I also think they did it because they knew it would ultimately bleed over a little bit into retail, right? So I feel like I am really happy with where we are. I actually enjoyed the fact that they released Dire Maul a little bit early. You had people kind of itching for content that had already finished everything. And then there are folks that aren't going to go into raids, and they needed something to do when they got to max level, so it made a lot of sense to do that. But yeah, I'm very pleased.
Okay. Defcamp, Melderon, same question. With where we're at, we talked about this for so long, coming into release. We predicted a few things. We've probably been, relatively on point with what we predicted.
Yeah.
Are things happening the way you thought they would, and have there been any curveballs that you didn't see coming?
Honestly, I thought things were going to be a little rougher than they were. I thought the layering was going to be worse. I wasn't too big a fan of the layering, but the way it was implemented and the way it's been trickled down now is actually, on our server it's not that bad. I don't know how any of the other servers are. My biggest concern is server sizes and how they're going to go into Phase 2. We have some issues with some servers being heavily skewed Horde, not enough Alliance. So those are like my thoughts. What are we going to do come Phase 2 when our server Skyrim has literally 80% Horde almost. So yeah, as far as content though, I'm really happy how things are going right now. I think DM coming out a little early was nice. I'm ready for Phase 2, ready for some PvP, and but yeah, that's my biggest concern right now is the issue with the little bit of skewed of the factions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Melderon?
I think I would, in general, I think things are going well. However, there are things that do concern me. Skyrim is a very good example because of as you said, the very large faction skew we have. How are we going to deal with that? What is Phase 2 going to be like in a server where you can't find alliance? And our population size is extremely high as well, and we're worried about world bosses. There's only supposed to be one world boss, right? And if a server has a population of effectively 10,000 people at one time, that's much higher than it was during vanilla times, and that's also what it was like on private servers, and I think we should deviate from that as much as we possibly can. And then finally, my other concern is, Dire Maul released early, and that's fine. A lot of people enjoyed that. However, does that mean that Blizzard is going to also throw that away in future releases? Are they going to speed up some releases? This may be our only chance to play Classic WoW. We don't know if they're going to do TBC. We don't know if they're going to be doing Classic Plus. I think it's very important that we try to voice our concerns about how we put out content and make sure it sticks to the original plan and not rush things. However, I know that sounds a lot of doom and gloom, but I think that they're doing a very, very good job overall.
Yeah.
Platinum.
Yes.
2 months into the game. Are you a happy customer?
I'm so happy. One of the servers that I play on, Grobulus, they already have layering removed. You go to Orgrimmar and it's so super, super populated. One of the things I was super happy about was the server health when the game launched. I was so worried that servers were going to be crashing all the time. And the only thing we had to deal with was queues, which sucks, but you know that once you finally get through that queue, you can play the game, and it was stable, and it was good. And I was super happy about that, yeah.
Okay, very good. Guys, I'm going to open this one up to the floor because you've already raised some points that I think warrant further discussion. And it's, we sit here and we analyze what we've got. We are consumers of the game. We pay a monthly subscription. And we want to know the health of the game that we are currently playing. And Melderon, Ayle, Defcamp, you guys have hit on this. Things moving forward that might become issues that the community would highlight. And you've talked about faction imbalance. You talked about overall populations. And so when I say first in, best dressed, as you guys know I like to do, Ayle, I know you raised a great example with me recently in terms of free server transfers and the shenanigans that can happen there, which throw other servers askew if big guilds do plan together to move somewhere else. What could Blizzard do, or what do you anticipate is going to happen in the future in terms of servers being, quote unquote, messed with a little bit in this regard in terms of faction ratios?
Well, we all know that what brings a lot of us to Classic is just how good the community is, right? We want to play on healthy servers, active servers with a lot of people. You want to be able to run those dungeons and things like that because, there isn't the modern conveniences. That's why we're playing Classic. So I hope that at some point in the future that they work a little bit to make sure to preserve those communities. Right now, it's been difficult on our server, as I said, because the transfers have just been wide open and it's caused one faction almost to leave entirely. So I hope that there is consideration they give to the communities and how they, essentially manage these communities. So whether it's only, one specific faction being able to transfer or having paid transfers, things like that. I think that's the most important thing for a lot of people is that this game means something when you're playing with other people, right? Against them, with them. And having that being, there's a couple cracks right now, and I really hope they address that in some way. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about that is obviously when WoW came out, you couldn't transfer servers to begin with, right? And so we talk about not having any changes, but already right away we're able to transfer from one server to another. And so things kind of just worked themselves out 15 years ago, right? There weren't as many imbalances, I think, in those days in terms of populations on a given server. Also, there were fewer people overall. You raised a great point earlier about the fact once world bosses come out, are we going to have too many people? Well, we already know the populations are higher than they used to be. I was our Maelstrom RP PvP server back in vanilla, and the big thing, we maybe had 4 or 5 guilds. We were a fairly large server, 4 or 5 guilds competing for a Khazak kill. Now with, I don't know, what is it, double, maybe triple the population even, you're going to have a lot more competition for that, and if the respawn timers are the same and there's only one layer, then That's probably the biggest issue that I see coming out of it.
One thing I would say is looking at how things were done, in the past now with layering and everything, and I do have a little bit of faith in the Classic WoW development team. I think they've done a great job with things so far, and I think that they can take these concerns that we have and work them, into a good solution. I think one of the main things that we've seen is they've really taken into consideration what the community thinks, and they've looked at, multiple different sources of people saying this, we want that, and I think as long as they keep doing that, having an open door with the community, blue posts, things like that, I think we have a pretty good future to look forward to. I don't think things are going to be so bad, especially with how things have been laid out so far. I think they've done a really good job with what they had. We saw a lot of servers get pushed out during launch. We tried to say, hey guys, we think there's going to be a lot of people playing this game. Maybe you guys should have more than 8 servers, and they started pushing them out, but it was a little late, but they did it. But yeah, I think things are looking bright though. I think things will be okay.
Yeah, I just want to commend Omar Gonzalez and his team because they're doing a bang-up job. They really, really are, and I feel like that they have the community's best interests at heart, and I think that they also, don't have the immunity that we think they probably do have. They probably, have to work within the channels of Blizzard Activision. It's a large corporation, and there's things that, need to be addressed, and server size is probably one of those things where their hands were tied for a lot of things. But I think for the most part, the transparency, especially leading up to release about it was weekly things we were getting for a while there, weekly updates about what they're doing and how they're trying to implement changes and trying to make the game as close to the original game as possible. So I think, trust the process is definitely part of it. I just think that we should also just be a little bit vigilant. We shouldn't stop working now. It was a fight to get this game to come out, and I just think we should not just sit there and just take the waves as they come. Just be vigilant about what's happening at the same time as well.
I think keeping that open dialogue with the community is such an important thing. You've seen how they've changed how the phases have worked because of that community feedback, and I think that's something they need to continue to do in the future. I think one of their biggest problems they're going to have in the near future is dealing with those mega servers like Fairlina, for example, where there is no possible way you can remove layering and have that be a smooth process because there already is crazy queues for that. So talking with the community about ways that they can tackle that overpopulation of a server, whether that be free character transfers or maybe splitting the whole server in two so you have Fairlina 1 and Fairlina 2. I don't know, but keep that dialogue open and talk to us about what their plans are to make Phase 2 have no layering, for sure.
Guys, you mentioned, a few of you said that obviously Dire Maul was just released to us, and a lot of you are having a great time with that. But, I mean, we presume not much further down the track is something very exciting, which is Phase 2, which brings the honor system. PvP will come back, baby.
Hell yeah.
Now, if a few of you are on a server where you're like, no one really PvPs much anymore, well, hopefully that will turn around very soon. I want to know right now on this panel, who's the most excited for Phase 2?
Me.
Probably
Talk
definitely.
to us about it. Why?
So much of my original love of WoW is PvP. I love PvE content, I do, but whether it's World PvP, some of my best memories that I ever had playing this game is World PvP. Had an epic moment, when I was playing Alliance back in the day, storming the front gates of Orgrimmar, just awesome stuff. So to be able to experience that World PvP again, where people are going to be funneled into only being able to do PvP, not in Battlegrounds, but out in the world. People going into Molten Core and just getting destroyed. People going to Dire Maul getting destroyed. I can't wait. I play a priest, which is, it's obviously not going to be bashing people's heads in, but I'll be supporting, some people and hopefully getting my rank up. And I don't know, it's going to be a nice change of pace. Right now, there's some things to do. I find myself farming in DM most of the time and just waiting for raid, but having that Phase 2 and just going for that honor and it's going to be, taking up most of my time. So I'm really looking forward to that. Absolutely.
So for me, for Phase 2, I think it's going to be really fun because it's just going to be world PvP like hellscape in these like level 60 areas. And I think it's going to be fun for me personally for a solid like 4 days. And then every time I fly to Thorium Point and I get ganked every single time, it's not going to be that much fun anymore. But what it does do is it makes it so like if I want to get the Blackrock Mountain, I have to be escorted by my guild to do that. And that is just we're going into such a unique point in Classic where world PvP is so incentivized.
Absolutely.
That you're going to make some awesome memories if you.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people
start
play on
playing.
PvE servers, and that's great. But I feel that PvP, even though I'm not a huge PvP person, Defcamp's much more than I am. But I think PvP is a very big part of the game. And I believe that we haven't experienced all of World of Warcraft Classic until PvP is released, until the honor system is released and incentivizes PvP. PvP can happen now, of course, organically, but I think it's incentivized much more after honor is.
On a PvP server right now, it really does feel
It does.
like World of Warcraft Classic Light.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
That's one thing I want to say is like I don't want people who never played Classic before to come into Classic and think that, oh, this is all there is to it. There's so much more coming in these later phases that if you haven't experienced Classic yet, just hold out. It's going to get crazy. It is. It's going to get really intense.
It's funny you mentioned Thorium Point. I feel like everyone has a Blackrock Mountain story.
Yeah.
At some point. So BlizzCon 2005, I met some folks and like never thought I'd see them again. And maybe a year later, I'm getting in like a one-on-one just outside of Blackrock Mountain, and someone comes up and starts healing me. Thank you for the World PvP Priest. And come to find out, this is somebody I had met like a year ago at BlizzCon. I'm just like, how did this happen?
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ayle, one thing I want to ask you, buddy, is we've also talked about the population, and I think it would be remiss not to acknowledge that yes, with layers being removed, the population has decreased. We all somewhat predicted it. Yes, we're going to burst out of the gates. WoW Classic is going to be huge, and then a month or two into it, the subscriber numbers will start to somewhat drop down to, the quote-unquote tourists have gone away and servers start to settle. They're settling, though, at a level where, as the guys say, there still might be 10,000 people on a server. We move into Phase 2, World PvP, on a system, no layers. What kind of mayhem do you think is coming?
It's going to be chaos, really. And I think on the PvP servers as well, for people who haven't experienced that, it might be pretty eye-opening. There will be groups of really ruthless players going around killing anybody, especially those lower-level, easy-picking players, you,
Yeah, me.
who haven't leveled up yet,
Yes.
Josh. And it's really, what I really like about it is how they kind of mentioned earlier how it creates kind of divergent gameplay, because now, if you're getting ganked and you're having trouble leveling, well, maybe you reach out to some of your friends and say, hey, can you come back me up here? And then, then you have the numbers, then you have the advantage, right? So where before, that doesn't really exist as much, I feel like, in Classic, because you have more reward, right? You have to give something to risk, right? And so by putting this in, and especially on the PvP servers, losing that time just by having people ganking and stuff, I think it really will help pull people together. And so a lot of people have been kind of negative about it, saying, it might not be good, like people might quit and things like that, but I think it's going to bring a lot more people together than push them apart.
That's a good point. I think, one thing is if you find yourself playing a lot by yourself now, definitely make some friends, because you're going to have a horrible
Strength
time.
in numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So, but and I really like what you said, Ayle, because it really does give you more of a reason to, talk to people, to socialize, to make friends, to go out there and maybe help somebody you normally wouldn't have helped, and, they might back you up in the future. So, yeah.
With this Phase 2 coming, guys, the one thing, obviously, a lot of Classic fans here in front of us, we've talked about the reasons to be excited for Phase 2. If I were to put you guys in the decision-making shoes and said, all right, you're on the Classic team now, when would you drop Phase 2?
I would, if it's open to anyone, what I would look at is the data from vanilla, and I would say, all right, at what point, how far along was the population at a given point when we released Blackwing Lair or something along those lines? I think what we forget a lot of times is that in vanilla WoW, raiding wasn't part of everyone's life, and I think only the top 5 or 10% were really in raids. And so I think right now there's this rush to like push content out because the streamers, the hardcore raiders, they're already through the content, let's release it. But we got to remember that vanilla WoW wasn't created for raiders, it was created for the average person that wanted to enjoy the journey. So I think we need to wait for the data to show that a significant portion of the playing player base has made it up to 60. They don't have to go to Molten Core, but let's get them to that point where they're actually able to participate in these things and not lose sight. The streamers on Classic WoW, they're not going to stop playing. So
I've got a follow-up question for you, mate,
Okay.
because you just said something that piqued my interest. Now, we know that Classic is not vanilla, vanilla is not Classic.
Right.
You've said that back in the day, it was catered towards the average player, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Do you honestly feel that Classic, that's still the same ethos?
No, it's a great question. I think the people that are discovering WoW for the first time are probably in that wheelhouse, but it certainly was created for a private server player that certainly isn't in that demographic. So I think you're right. It's probably changed at this point. But I'm a filthy casual, so I just want them to do it for me.
Join the club, mate. That's all
right.
right.
That's right.
Ayle, I know you want to get in on this.
Why don't we ask the audience? How many people are playing Classic?
Yeah.
How many people have leveled up to 60?
Okay.
Only
So
about 20%.
20%? Yeah.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I think that still rings true today that, it isn't just for people pushing that end-game content. It's really an RPG that you play at your own pace, right? And so I know a lot of us, I think up here especially, are skewed. Who's 60 here, right? Like most of us, not Josh.
Not me.
So for us, we have a little bit of a different perspective, but there's a lot more to the game than just the end game, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if you guys remember when DM came out, there was a lot of people who said, not yet, we're not ready.
It's too soon.
It's too soon, yeah. A lot of people were saying that, and honestly, I kind of agreed with them a little bit. I was one of the fortunate ones who was able to take a couple weeks off work and power level, and still didn't get to 60 at the time I wanted to, but, for a lot of people now, this game we played 15 years ago, a lot of us are in different points in our life now. You know what I mean? Some people work full time, some people have families. They can't play as much as they used to. And I think we got to keep that in consideration too. There's a lot of people who play this game for the leveling experience, for playing with their friends, for doing dungeons, and then maybe doing some any game dungeons, doing a raid here and there, but I don't think we should really focus on the 1% and maybe try to balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that PvP release, it's a really hard thing. In a way, I think this is a perfect time to do it because PvP is sustainable content, and it's multiply. It's almost like self-replicating content, right? It provides organic ways for people to engage in infinite combinations. So on one end, I think that it probably should have been released early, even before Dire Maul. The problem is, of course, the honor gear. So that's an issue with the meta. But I think that PvP itself doesn't really, the release of the honor system doesn't really affect the game in a negative way. I think it's going to be a positive thing because it produces so much organic content. And again, if you're on a PvP server, that doesn't, it's not really happen very often until Battlegrounds come out. But on a PvP server, I think that the honor system is really a sandboxy environment.
Yeah.
So it's really good for the game, in my opinion.
For me personally, I feel like they should release Phase 2 January or February, and the reason I have for that is if you want to get rank 14, you have to play 18 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and if you release it around Christmas time, some lives might be ruined. So I feel like you should set it back a little bit, and again, I feel like we are the very vocal minority. I feel like there's a huge casual player base that still hasn't hit 60 yet. And I feel like they're still just enjoying the game. And I feel like you guys said, rushing it is not a good idea.
Guys, I've got two more relatively quick questions that I want to hear from everyone on, and then we'll throw it open to the floor for some Q&A. But obviously, with this in the near future, this Phase 2 in the PvP, we all, play a certain class as our main, doing our thing. I want to know what class you're scared of the most coming into phase 2.
SL lock, dude.
Yeah.
SL lock all day. I mean, as a shadow priest, like when I play shadow, I play PI spec and shadow, so mostly healing. But SL locks are just scary. They're just, especially when they're geared. You know, like we had a SL lock. We had like a little duel tournament, and you know, give them like some tier 1, some shadow resistance. They just can't quit.
But I've been taught, Defcamp, that SL locks are like the boogeyman. They don't exist. They're so rare. You never see them.
You will see them in phase 2. Be sure of that. You will. Yeah. And trust me, there's a lot of them out there. Like, you know, the tier 1 set is not that great for a warlock, but for PvP, it's amazing. So if people are spending their DKP right, you should be getting that tier 1. Yeah.
Who else?
I think he took my answer, but I'll just say Shadow Priest as well. Shadow Priest is another class you don't want to come across.
In the 1v1.
In 1v1, right, exactly.
We're coming for you, Melderon.
Oh, I know. I know. I use my, make sure my lightning bolts are coming out quick.
Yeah.
I can totally see hunters just stalking around the level 60 zones, just
Oh,
picking
yeah.
people off as far as they possibly can, just kiting them. Like, they're going to be the vultures of phase 2, I feel.
Female Night Elf Hunters.
Oh, the bane of
100%.
my existence.
Yep.
I'm with you, Platinum. Hunters, like, everyone talks to me. Oh, they're easy. Just run away from them and then go back. And it's like, no, hunters own
If
me.
they
I am
engage you
horrible.
from max distance
Yeah.
and you're like, let's say,
When you have no
or
mana
something,
as well.
like you're screwed. It's the fight's already over.
When you have no mana.
Yeah. And then they pop out a Shadow Meld. Yeah.
As a mage, it's probably BM Hunter. Nothing more annoying to me than just not being able to shake that pet. It's between that and a rogue. If a rogue gets the jump on me, it can be a little bit tough, but no, definitely BM Hunter all the way.
It's Ayle. Actually, you go first, and then I'll jump in with what I got.
Well, it depends how many healers I have as a warrior.
As a warrior,
Yeah.
yeah.
Typical warrior
Fair
response.
enough. Well, we were talking about this earlier, guys, and another really quick one.